Ezinne, what is this?
It's nothing, Mama.
You must obey me. I am your mother.
But it is my life, Mama.
A degree cannot warm your bed at night, Ezinne, Mama Beatrice shouted, slamming a heavy clay pot onto the wooden table. The room shook, and so did Ezinne's hands. She tried to hide her business proposal under a textbook, but her mother snatched it away, tearing the pages in half. Ezinne felt a hot tear slip down her cheek. For years, her hard work was treated like a shameful crime. Her mother did not care about corporate dreams or international programs. Mama Beatrice wanted a wedding invitation, and she was ready to burn her daughter's future to get it. Ndidi walked into the living room, her chest tightening as she witnessed the broken paper scattered across the floor. She knelt silently to help her sister gather the pieces, but Mama Beatrice stepped on Ezinne's ruined dream. The mother glared at Ndidi next, pointing a sharp finger. She demanded to know why Obi, the wealthy suitor who had been flooding the house with expensive gifts, had not received an answer yet. Ndidi swallowed the bitter lump in her throat. She was being pushed toward a stranger like a piece of livestock, all to satisfy her mother's desperate obsession. The next morning, Ezinne stood outside the International Fellowship office, her eyes red from a sleepless night. She begged the coordinator for an extension, but the man simply shook his head and closed the heavy glass door in her face. Her career was slipping away before it even started. Meanwhile, back at the family house, Obi arrived unannounced. He did not ask about Ndidi's day or her feelings. He simply handed Mama Beatrice an expensive gold necklace. Ndidi watched from the doorway, feeling completely invisible as her mother practically sold her away. A week later, the boiling tension finally exploded into chaos. Ndidi gathered every ounce of courage she had left and handed the gold necklace back to Obi, telling him she would never be his wife. Obi's face twisted with pure rage. He insulted her character and threatened to ruin her family's name before storming out. When Mama Beatrice discovered the broken alliance, her fury was terrifying. She screamed that her daughters were a curse, bringing shame instead of sons-in-law. The emotional abuse cut deeper than any physical blow, fracturing the sisters' spirits. The relentless toxicity in the house soon broke Ndidi's fragile health. Late that night, under the cover of a fierce thunderstorm, Ezinne heard a strange, hollow thud from the kitchen. She rushed inside and found Ndidi lying cold on the cement floor. Her eyes rolled back. Ezinne dropped to her knees, screaming her sister's name as she desperately shook her limp body. Mama Beatrice ran into the room and froze, the cruel words dying in her throat. The obsession with marriage instantly shattered against the terrifying silence of her dying daughter. The hospital hallway smelled heavily of bleach and despair. Ezinne paced the cold floor, her heart hammering against her ribs, while Mama Beatrice sat on a wooden bench, staring blankly at her own trembling hands. When the doctor finally stepped out, his face was grim. He explained that extreme emotional distress had triggered a severe panic attack, causing Ndidi's heart rate to drop dangerously low. Ezinne glared bitterly at her mother. The truth was out. Mama Beatrice's desperate obsession had almost killed her own child, turning their home into a toxic trap instead of a sanctuary. 2 weeks later, Ndidi returned home, her body frail, but her eyes filled with a new, quiet determination. The sisters promised to protect each other, ignoring their mother's awkward, guilt-ridden silences. But peace was a luxury they could not afford. On a warm Thursday afternoon, a heavy knock echoed through the compound. Ezinne opened the heavy wooden door to find a tall, rugged stranger standing there. He carried an old leather briefcase and a cold, confident smirk. He did not introduce himself politely. Instead, he pushed past Ezinne, stepping into the living room like he owned it.
Mama Beatrice hurried into the room, her voice shaking as she demanded to know who allowed a stranger into her house. The young man slowly pulled a faded official birth certificate from his briefcase and tossed it onto the table. "My name is David," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "I am the firstborn son of your late husband from his secret marriage in the city." Mama Beatrice choked on her breath, her face turning completely ash grey. David leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. He coldly announced that he had come to claim his rightful inheritance, their family home. The revelation struck the household like a sudden lightning bolt. David was ruthless, immediately moving his heavy bags into the primary guest room and demanding to be served like a king. He showed no mercy to the grieving widow or her daughters. Ezinne tried to look for her late father's original property documents, but the metal safe in the bedroom was completely empty. Fear began to grip the family as David threatened to throw them all out onto the streets by the end of the month. The sisters' futures were now completely in jeopardy. In the midst of this terrifying crisis, Mama Beatrice collapsed onto her knees before her two daughters, weeping bitterly. The proud, controlling woman was completely broken. For the first time in her life, she apologized, realizing how her foolish pressure had divided the family when they needed to be united. Ezinne and Ndidi looked at their sobbing mother, their hearts softening despite the years of pain she had caused. They held her tight, realizing that to fight David and save their home, they had to bury the past and stand together as one. The fight for their survival began the very next morning. Ezinne refused to let David intimidate them any longer. She spent hours at the local Ministry of Lands digging through dusty, forgotten archives to find any record of her father's property registration. Meanwhile, back at the house, David's cruelty grew worse. He cut off the electricity and water supply to pressure them into leaving sooner. Ndidi stood her ground, shielding her frail mother from David's loud insults. The sisters were no longer the passive girls their mother used to control. They had become fierce warriors. While searching for a legal loophole at a small community center, Ezinne met a sharp, empathetic young lawyer named Samuel. He listened intensely to her family's desperate situation, his eyes showing genuine concern rather than greed. Samuel agreed to review the case for free, touched by Ezinne's fierce dedication to her family. As they worked late into the night over legal documents, a deep, natural connection began to form between them. For the first time in months, Ezinne felt truly seen and supported for her bright mind, not just her potential as a wife. At the same time, Ndidi found an unexpected ally in her own life. To help raise money for their potential legal fees, she took a temporary job managing logistics at a new local clinic. Her supervisor, a kind and hard-working doctor named Maxwell, noticed her incredible organizational skills and gentle spirit. When Ndidi had a minor anxiety relapse at work due to the ongoing stress at home, Maxwell didn't judge her. He sat with her, offering calm comfort and reassurances. He valued her resilience, proving to Ndidi what real, respectful love actually looked like.
The day of reckoning arrived when David brought a corrupt local auctioneer to valuate the house for an immediate sale. He ordered Mama Beatrice to pack her few remaining belongings into plastic bags. Just as David raised his hand to push the weeping older woman out the front door, Samuel and Maxwell arrived together, flanked by 2 uniformed police officers. Samuel stepped forward, boldly holding up an official court injunction. The sudden intervention caught David completely off guard, his confident, arrogant smirk instantly vanishing as Samuel began to speak.
"This document is a fraud," Samuel announced, pointing directly at David's birth certificate. Samuel had discovered that David's mother was never legally married to the girl's late father, making his claim completely invalid under the current law. Furthermore, Maxwell had helped secure a character witness from David's past village, exposing him as a notorious scammer who targeted vulnerable widows. Seeing the police officer step forward with handcuffs, David panicked. He grabbed his briefcase and sprinted out the back door, fleeing into the bushes, leaving the family finally safe.
The heavy silence that followed David's sudden escape was broken only by the sound of Mama Beatrice's soft sobbing. This time, however, her tears were filled with overwhelming relief rather than bitter grief. She looked around the living room, realizing that the walls sheltering her were saved, not by wealthy suitors, but by the brilliant mind of Ezinne and the fierce resilience of Ndidi. Standing before her daughters, the once unyielding matriarch felt a deep wave of shame. She finally saw them for who they truly were: strong, independent women who carried the family's honor on their own terms. That evening, Mama Beatrice called her daughters into the kitchen, the very place where their constant conflicts used to boil over. She sat them down and took their hands in her own trembling palms. With a cracked voice, she formally begged for their forgiveness. She confessed that her intense pressure came from her own deep fears of poverty and societal mockery. But she now realized she had almost destroyed her own blood. Ezinne and Ndidi wept as they embraced her, finally feeling the genuine warmth of a mother's unconditional love, free from any hidden expectations. With the dark cloud of the court battle completely gone, Ezinne's life began to transform beautifully. Samuel, who had stood by her through the darkest hours of the legal crisis, officially confessed his love for her. He did not want to lock her in a cage. Instead, he encouraged her to reapply for the international fellowship program she had missed. This time, with her mind completely at peace and Samuel's unwavering support, Ezinne's brilliant proposal was proudly accepted. She was finally stepping into her dream as a global entrepreneur, cherished for her powerful intellect. Ndidi's life flourished just as beautifully. Her temporary job at the community clinic soon turned into a permanent management position, where her talents shone brightly every day. Her relationship with Maxwell grew deeper, built on a solid foundation of mutual respect, shared laughter, and deep emotional healing. When Maxwell eventually knelt down to ask for her hand in marriage on a quiet evening, it felt entirely different. It was not a transaction forced by family greed, but a beautiful, free choice between 2 equals who truly adored each other's souls. The family compound was eventually filled with music and bright laughter during a joyous double celebration. Mama Beatrice stood in the center of the decorated yard, her eyes shining with pure pride as she watched her daughters dance happily with their partners. She looked at the colorful banners and realized that delay was never a denial.
Success and love could never be forced into a rigid societal mold. True happiness had finally entered her home, blooming beautifully only when she allowed her daughters the freedom to walk their own unique, destined paths.